Good morning, all. As we enter into this virtual service, please note that those of you participating via Zoom have been muted by our host. And we ask that those in-house participants please remain masked while in the sanctuary. Also, be advised that our services are being recorded and, with the exception of joys and concerns, will be published online. Finally, if you wish to take a moment to arrange your own chalice at home, please do so. The earth is the mother of all people, and all people should have equal rights to it. Chief Joseph. Tom will light our chalice this morning. I invite you to light your own chalice and place it where it can be seen by all of us if you are able. We gather this hour as people of faith, with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope as a sign of our quest for truth and meaning in celebration of the life we share together. May the light within us bring hope and courage to all those who suffer. Thank you, Tom. Before we sing the first hymn, let me remind our remote participants to leave yourselves muted and our in-house participants to remain masked. However, we want you and whoever is with you to sing with Mary and Jan as big and loud as you like. Make it a joyous experience. So let's all sing the opening hymn, We Are Not Our Own, number 317.
We are not our own, earth forms us, human leaves on nature's growing vine, fruit of many generations, seeds of life divine. We are not alone, earth names us, past and present, peoples far and far, family and friends and strangers, show us who we are. Therefore let us make thanksgiving, and with justice willing and aware, give to earth and all things living liturgies of care. Let us be a house of welcome, living stone upholding living stone, gladly showing all our neighbors we are not alone.
Thank you. Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist community of Cambria. We're glad you've joined us today. We acknowledge that our UUCC sanctuary stands on land that has been and still is inhabited by coastal Chumash and Salinan indigenous peoples, whose ancestors lived primarily in the San Luis Obispo, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties. As a Unitarian Universalist community, we celebrate religious diversity and welcome all who journey in search of faith and spirituality. The UUCC is a lay-led congregation, inviting speakers from different religious traditions and spiritual or scientific backgrounds to speak at our pulpit. We encourage presentations covering a variety of topics and areas of interest to our community that connect with the 7 UU principles. Today's service centers around the first principle. We affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Reverence and respect for human nature is at the core of Unitarian Universalist UU faith. We believe that all the dimensions of our being carry the potential to do good. We celebrate the gifts of being human, our intelligence and capacity for observation and reason, our senses and ability to appreciate beauty, our creativity, our feelings and emotions. We cherish our bodies as well as our souls. We can use these gifts to offer love, to work for justice, to heal injury, to create pleasure for ourselves and others. My name is Mary Ann Anderson, and I'm your worship associate this morning. I would like to extend a special welcome to today's guests and visitors. We're glad you've joined us this morning. And if you are not on our mailing list, please visit our website at www.uuccambria.org so that we can keep you informed about all our activities. And please check out What's Happening, a weekly e-blast sent to all our members and friends. This is a great way to keep up with the latest news in our community. And a reminder, if you wish to see this or any of our past Zoom services again, recordings of these services can be found on the UUCC website and on Facebook as well. The membership committee invites non-members to consider joining our community. Please contact Diane DeMarco or a person on the board if you are interested. Thank you. So again, good morning and welcome to everyone. Treva has something to share.
Good morning, all. I wanted to take a moment to speak to the congregation about yesterday's board retreat. We had discussed beforehand what the retreat should look like, and in light of last Saturday's covenant meeting, we all agreed that it should really be a time to reaffirm and rebuild our connections with each other. We spent time discussing the challenges we faced over the last few years, reflecting on what we were in the past and what we want to be in the future. We all agreed that we want to be a part of a loving community that comes together for connection and spirituality. We agreed that what drew us in initially was the feeling of community that we immediately felt when we walked into our first service, whether it was at Arlington, the old schoolhouse, the Vets Hall, or staged out of someone's trunk. We then all admitted that over the last few years, we felt we've lost that sense, that feeling of community for a variety of reasons, like unresolved interpersonal conflicts and continuing challenges posed by COVID. But it's now time to move forward, together working towards reviving that community. We, the Unitarian Universalist Community of Cambria Board of Trustees, reaffirmed our commitment to each other, our community, and to honoring the covenant. We want to rebuild that community that we loved and appreciated, and it really starts by reminding ourselves of what our purpose is. Our mission statement appears on the first slide of every Sunday service. I know that I had actually stopped seeing it a long time ago. Like everything that you see all the time, it kind of disappears. But it's somewhat similar to our affirmation, but I'm going to talk about that in a moment. Our mission statement, and there it is, thank you, Randy, is we strive to build community through love, to support spiritual growth, and to promote social and environmental justice. Our UUCC volunteers collaborate to do a great job promoting social and environmental justice, but we, the congregants, must start coming together in love to rebuild our community, which started last Saturday. I also wanted to very quickly address the concern regarding the drop in our membership numbers. At the covenant meeting, I saw the surprised look and immediate concern in everyone's eyes and eyebrows when we heard that 16 people left the church. And I wanted to clarify what the 16 was composed of. There were 3 deaths in our congregation over the last few years. 2 have moved out of the area. 2 were removed from membership rolls after a prolonged absence. And by prolonged absence, I mean years. 2 had to leave for personal or logistical reasons. 3 converted to pledging friends, and 4 did quit the membership. So 16 may have been a shocking number to hear, but when you really look at it, the reasons are not as alarming. We didn't lose 16 people that up and quit. And when you actually take a look at the reasons for drop in membership, these numbers actually represent a fairly normal attrition rate for that period of time. And with our number being about 36, we are actually classified by the UUA as a family congregation. And we talked about that, and we really felt that that designation it describes what we want to be again. It describes us, and it's a label that we're actually able to embrace. So let us come back now to the affirmation with a renewed sense of purpose that we might continue coming together in peace and love to work towards spiritual growth while being mindful of strengthening our connections with each other and commitments. I would like to intentionally read the affirmation this morning, mindful of what the words really mean and what we commit ourselves, what we commit to ourselves and to each other every weekend when we recite them. Because love is the spirit of our church, and service is its prayer. Our great covenant is to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in freedom, and to help one another. So may it be. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Treva.
Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its prayer. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in freedom, and to help, and to help, and to help one another.
We set aside this time for any short announcements that would be of interest to our UU community members and friends. Please keep your items short and to the point. For any items that need more explanation, please call or email the person after the service to be respectful of everyone's time. If you have an announcement, please raise your hand. When Diane or I call your name, stand and unmute yourself and then speak. I believe that Jan has an announcement here in the sanctuary.
Yes, I'm sure, am I on? Hello, hello. I'm sure that you're all tired of hearing me talk about the scholarship committee, so we've designated another member of our committee to talk about the scholarship. Steve, can you approach the podium, please? Approach the podium. Thank you.
I just want to underscore what Jan has said about scholarship committee. We have been working very hard. We've looked at and evaluated this year's applications carefully and collaboratively, and we're participating with student interviews this coming Thursday for a full day. And I just want to once again affirm how important it is to give scholarships this year. Our kids and all kids have had an extremely tough educational year. We would like to urge you to give a donation because we would that way be able to give more scholarships than the ones we presently have allocated. And also we have now a number of applicants from Leffingwell And we'd like to extend that possibility and the opportunity that that provides for many students to get scholarships as well. So please think, send in a check, donate it to the scholarship fund, and we will proceed from there. And I know that many people are going to be planning a wonderful service in June, as we usually do. So please think about it and be generous, and think of our students in this community who we want to help. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. And I'm going to tell a little story about the scholarships that we've been giving out here for I don't know how many years. How many years have we been doing this? This year we had close to 40 applicants, and it's quite an endeavor for this committee, but we're committed to it. The committee is committed. And I have a very special announcement that's very close to my heart. Martha Gomez Mora received a scholarship from us 4 years ago. And she didn't have enough money to go to a regular school or leave home. She had to stay home and work, which she did. And she attended Cuesta. After Cuesta, she was a star athlete and a star student. She was accepted into UCLA. She will be graduating from UCLA this year, and she's just been accepted into Harvard Graduate School. That's how far our scholarships go, guys. So dig deep into those pockets, because you don't know that we don't know how important these things are to the children, to the young people, the young adults in our community. So congratulations, Martha. Excuse me if I'm a little emotional. Okay. Any other announcement? Hank, would you like to?
I don't know if you can hear me. I'm back here. But I'd like to suggest that the people at home put on their shoes next week and get their, you know what's in this sanctuary for in-person service. I do think it helps build and maintain community.
Yes, and if you didn't hear Hank, I'm sure you got the gist of it. The sanctuary is open to all to come, and that really does seal and gel our sense of family and community. You're right, Hank. Thank you. Thank you. Are there any other announcements from the sanctuary? Andy?
Hi, everybody. This is a little spur of the moment, but I've decided to host a meditation Sangha group Thursday mornings right here at 10 a.m. We'll gather in a circle, meditate for about 30, 40 minutes, read a poem, just speak of what resonates, and then be on our way. Question? I'm not familiar with Sangha. Sangha is a meditation circle, a group. And a second one, even less planned, is that I'm going to sponsor a blood drive, or at least try to. I used to give blood all the time, and I don't know how to do it out here. And it's so important right now. I want to maybe get them to come here, and so we don't have to go to Paso or something. Oh my God, so I missed that. Okay, I got to catch up on the blood drive thing, but it's so important in case we can actually help out. Thank you.
All right, Joel, would you please lower your hand and tell us your announcement?
There's a potluck scheduled for 2 weeks, March 19th, Saturday night.
Okay, a potluck scheduled for 2 weeks, March 19th.
Details will be provided in an email.
Details will be provided in an email. Is that correct?
That's it.
Thank you, Joel. Okay, Lou, would you please unmute yourself and lower your hand?
Good morning. I'll just follow up on Steve and say that that we really have an amazing group of students. We've also read some really distressing stories, and we hope we can help some of those students. But my main announcement is the men's group meets tomorrow. We'll be in the sanctuary, but with Zoom as well. And so hope to see people there. Thank you.
Thank you, Lou. And I have an announcement that the women's group is meeting tomorrow on Zoom, and anyone who would like to join us, who is a woman, can contact me, ddspirit55@gmail.com, and I will send you an invitation. And also a quick reminder that we will be having our second covenant meeting which will be March 26th at 1 o'clock in the sanctuary. Okay, back to you, Marianne.
Thank you, Diane. Next week, Michael Esselin will present spiritual report cards. We take this time to celebrate all those who are having a birthday this month. Birthdays are a special moment. It is a time in which you feel as if the world is taking a moment to invite you into being, just like it was on the day of your birth. If you have a birthday this month, please raise your hand. When Diane or I call your name, unmute yourself and please reveal your special date. Anybody in the sanctuary have birthdays this month? Rebecca, what date?
The 20th.
The 20th. Any more people in here?
Yep,
Diane?
March 28th.
March 28th.
All right, do we have any more birthdays? I think that's it, Marianne.
This birthday candle honors all the friends and family members in this community who are also celebrating birthdays this month. Sharing together some of our personal and significant joys and concerns brings us closer as a faith community. We invite you to share milestones that are deeply felt as a part of your personal life. But please be mindful and considerate of all who come to worship with us this morning. This is a time of community building. The collective flames of these candles embody all the joys and sorrows which may have gone unspoken today, but they are also deeply felt in this community. I am speaking for the Okanagan Indigenous peoples in terms of the way we think about land. We never have thought of it, I don't think, as anything static, as anything physical. We've always thought about it as a process of interactions, a process of changes, and a process that's ongoing. And so a lot of things that we think about as Okanagan people is how these systems should inform us in terms of our interactions and the principles that we need to think about and adhere to. In the process of learning in our society, one of the things that we have come to understand is that there always needs to be that connection to and from the individual, and the connection of the family, and the connection to community, and how that intersects to the natural world. This is from Jeanette Armstrong, Okanagan author and educator. Let us enter into a place of peace and serenity where you are one with your spiritual being. Be at peace within your space where the absence of all that is temporal is its most cherished gift. Let us enter the stillness. When love and compassion are present in us and we send them outward, then that is truly prayer. Further, in sending love outward, we may notice a change in our own heart. The following is a poem about the struggles of the Indigenous peoples by Daniel Day Moses from Six Nations of the Grand River Tribes in Ontario, Canada. What land have you cast from the blotted out region of your face? What nation sung by watermarks, stung by watermarks, was filmed out of extinction and brought forth resembling frost? What offspring must jump through the eye of birth to be winked at when covered with brick sweat? What ache piled its planks on the corner pier now crumbles onto motionless water, sniffed out by forest smoke? What makes this song a string of beads seized by cement cracks when the camera climbs through the basement window, winter clouds coiling through its speckled lens? What season cannot locate an eye in the dark of the sound of the sun grating into red ochre after I thought you noticed my language was half wren, half pigeon, and together we spoke a wing pattern on the wall that was raised to keep us out there, where calling became culling, distance distanced in a mere scrape of enamel on yellow teeth? What father woke, turned over his wife she didn't want to, but he pushed until the baby leapt through, now, strummed into a chorus of burn marks on ceilings where police sirens fruit magpie skulls on trees of monsoon lightning? What is how that song chimed in the wilderness? Please join in singing We Stand on Holy Ground by Carol Eaglehart.
We stand on holy ground. We stand on holy ground. Wherever on this earth we stand on holy ground. Each land is sacred land. Each land is sacred land. Wherever on this earth we stand, each land is sacred land. We cherish all that lives. We cherish all that lives. Wherever on this earth we stand, we cherish all that lives. Respect the web of life. Respect the web of life. Wherever on this earth we stand, respect the web of life. We stand on holy ground. We stand on holy ground. Wherever on this earth we stand on holy ground.
Today's sermon is titled, We Are All Living on First Peoples Land, Indigenous Land Acknowledgements, to be delivered by Rebecca Hendricks. Rebecca and her husband Ted have loved living in Cambria for the past 6 years. She has reveled in the temperate climate and being in the midst of so many interesting people. For many years, she has been passionate about the environment, volunteering for Adopt a Highway, beach cleanups, and the Marine Mammal Center. Her time at UUCC has allowed her to provide music with her voice and bells, and to deliver meals and goods to the needy, to serve on the scholarship committee, and to be introduced to and inspired by topics like the one in this morning's presentation. Rebecca?
Good morning. I would like to say that I have long experience and deep expertise on this topic, but I can't. This exploration was prompted by Andy Fagan, suggesting an acknowledgement in our own Sunday services starting last September 2021. Mary then forwarded me reading materials, and I became curious if additional conversations within our church might be helpful. My objective this morning is to present the basics of land or territory acknowledgements and to ask you members and friends if there are additional activities or actions that might deepen our understanding and commitment to Indigenous peoples upon whose stolen land we now reside. There will be time at the end of the service for you to share opinions, thoughts, and ideas, so be thinking about that as I move forward. The following introduction is a guide from the Native Governance Center event on Indigenous Peoples Day 2019. Thank you, Mary. So what is an Indigenous Land Acknowledgement Statement, or we can call it an ILA? Acronyms, we have to have a few of those. It is a formal statement that recognizes the unique and enduring relationship that exists between Indigenous people and their traditional territories. And this is true whether or not they are still living on those lands or not, or whether they are recognized as tribes living on that land. So why do we have an Indigenous Land Acknowledgement Statement? Why is that important? Well, we need to understand the long-standing history, long before we came to reside on these lands, and then to understand our place within that history. Land acknowledgements, and I had to think about this because I was working and I was thinking I'm going back in history. And of course, land acknowledgements do not exist only in a past tense or a historical context. Colonialism is a current ongoing process, and we need to intentionally build our mindfulness of our present participation in that process. The following is a poem by the acclaimed Joy Harjo of the Muscogee Nation. She is the incumbent United States Poet Laureate, and she is the first Native American to hold that honor. The poem is An American Sunrise. We were running out of breath as we ran out to meet ourselves. We were surfacing the edge of our ancestors' fights and ready to strike. It was difficult to lose days in the Indian bar if you were straight. Easy if you played pool and drank to remember to forget. We made plans to be professional, and did. And some of us could sing, so we drummed a firelit pathway up to those starry stars. Sin was invented by the Christians, as was the devil, we sang. We were the heathens, but needed to be saved from them. Thin chance. We knew we were all related in this story. A little gin will clarify the dark and make us all feel like dancing. We had something to do with the origins of blues and jazz, I argued with a Pueblo as I filled the jukebox with dimes in June. 40 years later, and we still want justice. We are still America. We know the rumors of our demise. We spit them out. They die soon. So if we have an ILA, or an Indigenous Land Acknowledgement, in our church, what do? Even before we have an acknowledgement, we should start with self-reflection. Why are we writing and having an ILA be part of our organization, our Sunday routine, our daily thought process? Are we hoping to inspire others to take action to support Indigenous communities? Is it being delivered because everyone else is doing it? Is it politically correct, woke, I guess we could say in today's terminology? Is it out of guilt? I already know that the UU Worship Committee felt that this was an appropriate service inclusion in keeping with the UU principles. And my goal today is only to have you think about if there's something beyond that. And we'll talk more about that. So what is our end goal? What do we hope listeners will do after hearing the land acknowledgement on a Sunday morning? I will be personally extremely interested in any comments or suggestions that you might have at the end of the service. When will we have the largest impact? Timing, audience? We already share this during our service, and we have possible opportunities beyond our Sunday gatherings. So what do we need to do? We need to do your homework, do our homework. We need to make sure we understand thoroughly, as much as we can, about the Indigenous people to whom the land belongs. When I mentioned our land acknowledgement to several people last fall, I heard that the tribe continuously living in Cambria or having been continuously connected with the land of Cambria might be the Selenans rather than the Chumash, which I typically hear about. I then attended a retired teachers, California teachers event at Rios Caledonia Adobe in San Miguel, which displays the Salinan land extending down past Morro Bay, almost and sometimes in maps, including Avila Beach, knowing that when you get to Pismo, or Pismu, as it was known many hundreds of years ago, now you're entering Chumash land on the coast. And if you haven't been to the Rios Caledonia Adobe in San Miguel, maybe you've been to the mission, but Marge Sewell and I passed right by the mission and turned into the Adobe last September. Free pizza and soda from the retired California teachers. I have great friends. And we had a most marvelous lecture, a tour. The library is open on Fridays. And over their years of working with California Adobes in that association, they have had longtime volunteers that have done exceptional studies on the Indians and the indigenous tribes that have been located all over, but especially on the Central Coast. So I don't think I put that on a list, but a field trip over there would be something I would very much enjoy doing again. It was too short, but the pizza was good. Always. I never meet a pizza I don't like. I have since found, so that my curiosity is piqued. Where are the Chumash? Where are the Selenians? Where's Cambria in all of this? I went to a number of different sources. I brought a couple books today and found additional maps showing the Selenans living locally. Here are 4 maps from 4 different sources. I know they'll be a little small. If anyone would like them, I'd be happy to email them to you. But they are in the slides. They're similar in that we see, and I'll do this before we we see that most maps on the coast, these Selenans start around Big Sur and move south. And they move south at least to Morro Bay, which includes Cambria on all the maps as their ancestral historic land. And then sometimes it goes all the way up to Salinas. So you'll notice it covers the Soledad Mission, the Mission San Antonio, the San Miguel Mission, and then also the San Luis Obispo Mission. With going further south, the Chumash main mission is Santa Ynez outside of Solvang. And here you'll see these are the modern Ragged Point all the way down to Morro Bay, and then really internal land, not coastal land, being east of Santa Maria. so quite far south from us here. Let's take a look at the next one. And thank you, Randy, for my handy dandy pointer. I feel like I'm back in the corporate classroom again. I'm trying not to shine it at someone that I'm being a little irritated with. So Hank, you behave back there, okay? Okay, good. This is a much more ancient map, very interesting, where you see Antoniano, so around the San Antonio mission, and then Miguelino, and I don't speak Spanish well, Miguelino, which would be much more down where the San Miguel mission is. You see a lot of villages up to the north, and then obviously Big Sur coming down with the names of the villages, and then going again down almost, past Morro Bay to the south. The third map I found is in a wonderful little book that I got from Marge Sewell about specifically the Salinan Indians. And again, here we have Big Sur all the way down. So very similar, including Paso Robles, including in Tascadero, with San Luis Obispo on this map being outside of Salinan land. But you can see that it goes inland quite far south. And again, this one doesn't take it up to Salinas. So that none of them are in agreement, but you can see that the mass of the maps are very similar, especially when my concern was whose land was where Cambria is now. And I'm feeling pretty good about the fact that they are in agreement on that. And the last map, again, this takes it up. This one is further south from Soledad down, and again, keeping San Luis Obispo more on Chumash land, and but from Lucia, so Big Sur coming on down, not quite as far north, and then obviously the missions in here, and it would include the Soledad mission. So that was your geography lesson for the day. When I spoke with John Johnson, a historical specialist at the Santa Barbara Museum of Natural History, he told me that the people that were on our local land had a Salinan name for the location that is translatable in their language. Cambria also has a Chumash name as well, though he shared that the northern Chumash more likely came onto Salinan land to fish on the coast, and many eventually gravitated inland to San Miguel. I also contacted the Salinan tribe about their tribal map, which includes Cambria, and I received a detailed response from Patty Denton, the tribal administrator. Here is her email response. The Salinan people are the indigenous people of the Cambria area. The Villas of Villa Creek Ranch married a Salinan Indian woman, as did one of the brothers. Playano Salinan territory, and Playano merely means coastal. So Playa Indians or Playano territory merely means coastal. Playano Salinan territory was from Big Creek on the coast just below Big Sur to the Santa Maria River to the south. So they are saying it goes even further south because the Santa Maria River is straight west of Santa Maria. Patty continues, I descend from a Playano Salinan Indian woman, Agata Maria, who entered Mission San Antonio at the age of 100. According to mission records, her village site is at Islay Hill in San Luis Obispo. We are prehistoric people of the Central Coast. Many of our tribal members have traced their village sites to along the coast, including Cambria. The Chumash did not come into our territory until after the mission period, brought by the missionaries. In fact, we hear of the Salinans did not hear of the Northern Chumash until the 1970s, when one group formed a nonprofit and called themselves Chumash when they have nothing to do with the Chumash at Santa Ynez. Our people were the ones chased off of the Hearst property when George Hearst first came and took our land. San Simeon was a Salinan Mission San Miguel outpost. We would love a land acknowledgement honoring the Salinan people. I also read about the Portola expedition of 1769, which introduced the Salinan tribe to the Spanish. Soon after, the Junipero Serra journeys founded Mission San Miguel and Mission San Antonio, and of course, onward up the coast from Soledad. Within mere decades, the Salinan coastal or playa tribe were forcibly gathered into the mission fold, with the vast majority decimated by disease. Most of the Salinans' land became mission land, both San Miguel and San Antonio, and they were forced into labor by the missionaries. Mission records indicate that no Playan Salinan continued to live outside mission compounds after 1800, which left the peaceful tribe without land or sovereignty. This all happened in less than 50 years. This is a hard part to write for me, and I know it's played out throughout the nation as well as around the world as colonialism spent its hundreds of years globally. Locally, the Salinans were pushed off their property throughout the 19th and 20th centuries. One family lost their land in court to the Mar Land and Cattle Company in the 1930s. The Salinan tribe historically had extensive villages throughout San Luis Obispo and Monterey counties, and is believed to have existed on these lands for more than 10,000 years. So to me, it seems very clear that we reside on historical Salinan land. I now realize why so many parties and documentation do not always include the Salinan tribe, as they are not recognized by the federal government, and the creators of Mission San Miguel took their land and forced the Salinans to serve them. Many other tribes' lands were stolen before they had signed a treaty, leaving them without territory and sovereignty. Additionally, the federal government didn't always honor the treaties to which they agreed. Many of you know that the Salinan and Chumash tribes are negotiating right now with the federal government for ceremonial access to Morro Bay Rock on state park land. This rock and this land is recognized by the Salinan tribe as sacred land. I became familiar with a similar situation in Oahu after the military takeover of Hawaii in 1893. Which I did not learn about in grade school or high school, when the US military built many facilities and fences intentionally on and around homelanders' most sacred territory, keeping them from burial grounds and historical monuments. So not only do we want to do our homework in knowing about the tribe that lives there, we also want to make sure we're accurate about the names and the individuals, the people from this community. The Salinan tribe, I'm happy to say, is recognized by the state of California. And the state includes the tribe's names on the California State Indian Seal on the steps of the Capitol in Sacramento. According to the tribe's website, there are 700 active members living in Monterey and San Luis Obispo counties. Their website lists tribe leaders, events, and their efforts since around 1990 to receive federal recognition. It is an expensive process that is rarely successful, and the tribe is not of one mind. Many are seeking to restore its sovereignty, as are many Hawaiians, and to recover its ancestral artifacts and remains that are held by institutions throughout the United States and around the world. Others see the effort as taking money from educating the next generation on Salinas language and culture. So it's controversial, it's expensive, it is time-consuming, and it's fraught with a sense of frustration at how difficult the process is or how difficult choosing one side or the other is. And I certainly got that when I talked with people. We want to make sure that we have a correct pronunciation for the names of the tribes, places, and individuals. I had heard the tribal name pronounced Salinian, and I have since learned the proper pronunciation is Salinan, which makes our UU acknowledgement that much more accurate. As we look at Indigenous land acknowledgement, we have to use appropriate language. The guide that I looked at said, don't sugarcoat the past. And as we know, we're dealing with that enough of any other American history these days throughout the United States. Use terms like genocide, ethnic cleansing, stolen land, and forced removal to reflect actions taken by colonizers. I have great faith in people that are part of UU as members and friends to get past any personal guilt or frustration at being painted as a bad person, to be able to accurately look at history and then decide, how does that fit with my life today? And are there things that can become part of my life based on that recorded history? Use, again, past, present, and future tenses. Indigenous people are still here. Salinan people are still here, even if they have no sovereignty and no recognized land by the federal government. Land acknowledgements do not have to be grim, but they should function as living celebration of Indigenous communities. Ask yourself, how am I leaving Indigenous people in a stronger, more empowered place because of this land acknowledgement? Focus on the positivity of who Indigenous people are today. I haven't heard back from Patty. I told her I would love to meet her wherever and treat her to lunch or what other event she'd like to. I'd love to get to know a little bit more about those that live in our midst. So I'll be reporting back, and I'm looking forward to it. Personally, my history is more in the Midwest. I have Wisconsin Chippewa in me, as well as English, Dutch, Scotch, Welsh, Irish, and but I am more in tune with the Minnesota tribes and the tribes of the Midwest. But not enough to have felt the pain of becoming old enough to know what the history of my family might have been hundreds of years ago. And that's a very different thing when people acknowledge that they might have Indian ancestry in their DNA versus the people, for example, living in this county that know what has happened to them since 1769. Again, this was a really challenging piece for me to write. So, what are additional factors to consider? And then let me give you some examples of what we might do or what other people are doing, in case this is getting a little lectury, and I apologize if it is. I enjoyed writing it, but it was a lot of information. Don't ask an Indigenous person to deliver a welcome statement for your organization. We should be welcoming them to ours rather than having them take on any emotional labor for us. Build real, authentic relationships with Indigenous people. In addition to normal employment and family obligations, Indigenous people are working to heal their traumas, learn their languages, and support their nations. If you reach out for help, lead the conversation by asking an Indigenous person what you can do for them. Chances are they're likely overworked and could use your help. Compensate Indigenous people for their emotional labor. If you do plan to reach out to an Indigenous person or community for help, compensate them fairly. Too often, Indigenous people are asked to perform emotional labor for free. That was a very thought-provoking sentence to me when we think about, would you come speak to my group? Would you please share something of your family history? There's some emotional labor involved in that, and I found that an interesting, thought-provoking idea. Understand displacement and how that plays into land acknowledgement. So although we hear more about the Chumash locally, this is not necessarily their historical land. Land acknowledgement is complicated. Remember that the United States displaced many tribes from land before treaties were signed. There are many types of Indigenous land acknowledgements. Don't expect to find a simple, specific formula or template. Land acknowledgements that come from Indigenous people versus non-Indigenous people look different too. So now to some interesting examples. Here are examples of what other land acknowledgements sound like. I picked 3 or 4. This is from the land acknowledgement of our community birth center. We meet on the unceded land stolen from Kalapuya, Siuslaw, Cow Creek Umpqua, and Yakala peoples. I ask you to join me in acknowledging these communities, their elders, both past and present, as well as future generations. I ask that we also acknowledge that our culture was founded upon exclusions and erasures of many Indigenous peoples, including those on whose land our birth center will be located. This acknowledgement is to demonstrate a commitment to beginning the process of working to dismantle the ongoing legacies of settler colonialism. This is from the Denver City Council land acknowledgement. The Denver City Council honors and acknowledges that the land on which we reside is the traditional territory of the Ute, Cheyenne, and Arapaho peoples. We also recognize the 48 contemporary tribal nations that are historically tied to the lands that make up the state of Colorado. We honor elders past, present, and future, and those who have stewarded this land throughout generations. We also recognize that government, academic, and cultural institutions were founded upon and continue to enact exclusions and erasures of Indigenous peoples. May this acknowledgement demonstrate as a commitment to working to dismantle ongoing legacies of oppression and inequities and recognize the current and future contributions of Indigenous communities in Denver. The Montreal Daily's editorial board. We would like to acknowledge the fact that our office is built on unceded land. We are on the traditional territory of the Kanien'kehá:ka, people of the Flint, also known as Mohawk. The Kanien'kehá:ka are one of the 5 founding nations of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy and were referred to as, I love this, keepers of the Eastern Door. This island that we call Montreal is known as Teotke in the language of the Kanien'kehá:ka and has historically served as a meeting place for other Indigenous nations. What that is reminiscent to me is my favorite national monument in the United States is on the very boring border between Minnesota and South Dakota, not that far north of Iowa. And they serve as a sacred, it's the only place in the world other than I think maybe Israel, where you find pipestone. And there is a gigantic quarry there. In fact, Longfellow came out there when he wrote Hiawatha, by the shores of Gitche-Gumee. And that is a place where all the Indians could be safe. When you came onto the land of Pipestone, you went there to get the stone for your fetishes, for your pipes, peace pipes, and it was a sanctuary. And it is the most wonderful national monument if you happen to be out in that neck of the woods. The last example I have is from Midwestern University. Especially as a university which has been so resistant to acknowledging the land it is built on, we at Midwestern University recognize that by being silent, we are just as complicit in the ongoing oppression of Indigenous peoples. Alongside other groups on campus, we make this acknowledgement in the first step in fulfilling our responsibility to critically look at colonial histories and their present-day implications as we pay respect to the keepers of the land and the land itself. Several months ago, Jan Kallner also told me that when she had gone to, I believe, a concert or an event over at Cal Poly, that they read their land acknowledgement, and there are several others from student groups. ASI Cal Poly is a group that takes students on trips around California, and they're student-led. And they have a lovely acknowledgement along with a map of California with tribes on it. So before we finish up, let's talk about how we could take action We can do anything we want beyond having a land acknowledgement on Sunday mornings. We do a lot of other things with our time and effort. So I'll be interested to hear after I've finished if there are any ideas that you have that might be doable to take us one more step past where we have already begun. Land acknowledgement is a good starting place. The land acknowledgement was never meant to end there. It is an introduction. Anyone can acknowledge whose land you're on and weave in what that means to the specific event or programming you're conducting. This acknowledgement calls on all of us to end Indigenous erasure and engage with Native people in meaningful ways. Ask yourself, how do I plan to take action to support Indigenous communities? Here are some examples. Support Indigenous organization by donating your time and/or money. Shop at Indigenous stores. There is a market in Morro Bay. I hope it'll reopen when COVID is more under control. It's closed. It's been closed for several years, but I look forward to visiting it. It's also important that we note when an effort or a product shows up as cultural appropriation. A perfect example that this woman cited was Indian dream catchers that are made in China and sold in airports, right? To quote Shannon Laing, Director of Native Health and Wellness, an Indigenous land acknowledgement can also be cultural appropriation if it is not focused on our understanding of the longstanding history that has brought you to reside on the land and to seek to understand your place within history. That's our challenge. Buy and read books and poetry by Indigenous peoples. The internet is a treasure trove for discovering work by First Peoples and other Indigenous people and groups around the world. I had not heard the name of Jo Harjo. For heaven's sakes, she's the United States Poet Laureate. Had you heard of her? Because and I'm not as much into poetry, and it still behooves me. Just like we look at Black history and Black writings and other disenfranchised groups, Indigenous peoples all over the world. I've probably read more Aboriginal, having an exchange sister in Australia who's a poet. So, support Indigenous-led grassroots change movements and campaigns and encourage others to do so. So here are some specific actions that are happening across the United States, and I saved this to last because they were so interesting to me. The First Church of Minnesota, the Minneapolis congregation to which my sister Cynthia belongs, and they always seem to be a little bit ahead of every other progressive organization I know, have formed relationships with and provided financial support to a Native charter school of the Anishinaabe group of Indigenous peoples. A group of tribes came together to form the Anishinaabe group and have schools and activities going on within that whole area. So rather a coalition coming together of tribes to maybe seek having a little more power and a little larger voice in Minnesota. Commit to returning land. Local, state, and federal governments around the world are currently returning land to Indigenous peoples. Individuals are also returning their land. Research our options. My hometown of Granite Falls, Minnesota, has sold municipal land back to the Dakota tribe to build and live in earth lodges. The mayor had to go to the Minnesota State Legislature to create zoning changes and variances for these buildings, and the future looks promising for the Dakota Land Project for tribal members to live in lodgings just as their ancestors did. That makes me feel very warm about a very small town out on the fringes where I went to high school. Save the Redwood League here in California has returned 3,900 acres of Sinkyone lands to a consortium, again, a group of tribes, of 11 federally recognized tribes who will create a nonprofit. At the end of the day, as we conclude, starting somewhere is better than not trying at all. We've already done that. We need to share in Indigenous people's discomfort. They've been uncomfortable for a long time. Dr. Kate Bean, Flandreau, Santee, Dakota, and Muskogee Creek says, we have to try. Starting out with good intentions and a good heart is what matters most.
Thank you, Rebecca. Quite informative and provocative. The morning offering will now be given and received. Please keep in mind that our congregation is entirely self-governed by the democratic process. One of the privileges of our free church tradition is to provide all the financial support to our many ministries from among ourselves. Generosity, therefore, is one of the spiritual values we recognize as central to our personal and institutional well-being. You are invited to participate in the blessing of giving. For those at home, please use one of the methods shown on the screen. Thank you. Our thanks for all gifts given and received for the work of this community. Let us now sing the doxology.
From all that dwell below the skies, let faith and hope with love arise. Let beauty, truth, and good be sung through every land, by every tongue.
Please join us now in singing the closing hymn, "The Earth is Our Mother."
The earth is our mother, we must take care of her. The earth is our mother, we must take care of her. Hey, young the ho, young the hey, young, young. Hey, young the ho, young the hey, young, young. Her sacred ground we walk upon, with every step we take. Her sacred ground we walk upon, with every step we take. Hey, young the ho, young the hey, young, young. Hey, young the ho, young the hey, young, take a second and tell you something about this hymn I meant to say before we started to sing it, so I'll take it right now while Marianne gets back in place. Our hymnal says this is, attributes this to being Native American from Songs of Earthlings, but I found a musician and naturalist named Hawk Hurst who identifies this song as being from the Hoopa tribe of Northern California, Humboldt County. And hey young is a friendly greeting. So I just thought you might like to know that. Thank you, Marianne.
We like to know those friendly greetings. Let us now recite the valediction. We extinguish the flame of this chalice, and we know that the light of truth and love and the warmth of this community go with us until we meet again. Please extinguish your chalice at home now. After the benediction, please click on the gallery view button in the upper right-hand corner of your screen, but please remain muted. Diane or I will call on you when you raise your hand. Rebecca?
I know the service has gone long. I hope it was worth it staying a few extra minutes. If you did, if you can't stay any longer, you have a phone number and email for me. Feel free to give me any feedback. I'm open to anything. And if you can stay a minute, I'd love to hear any comments or suggestions you have. Now the benediction, which are the words of Crowfoot, chief of the Blackfeet, and this is from around 1885. Our land is more valuable than your money. It will last forever. It will not even perish by the flames of fire. As long as the sun shines and the waters flow, this land will be here to give life to men and animals. We cannot sell the lives of men and animals. Therefore, we cannot sell this land. It was put here for us by the Great Spirit, and we cannot sell it because it does not belong to us. You can count your money and burn it with the nod of a buffalo's head, but only the Great Spirit can count the grains of sand and the blades of grass of these plants. As a present to you, we will give you anything we have that you can take with you, but the land, never.